Hello and welcome back to the Invictus F1 Podcast with Sab and I. Good evening, Sab.
Good evening. It's good to be back with you. It's been just over a week since we've been in chat together. It could be a very interesting chat tonight. Could be plenty to talk about, as you will see the title of this podcast. We've also got to preview the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend and obviously discuss this week's Invictus Racing action with crowned champions to discuss. So, going to be a good evening of talk tonight on this podcast.
Yeah, plenty to cram in this evening. So we'll get started off, and yeah, you can see by the title, and if you are listening, the title of this one is "We Make the Rules." And with 2021, the new rules coming in a few seasons' time. Obviously, Liberty Media, Ross Brawn, Chase Carey are in deep discussions with the teams at the moment. But Sal and I have decided that we know better. We're gonna overrule everything they say, and we're gonna make some rules heading into the season. So Sab's made up 3 rules. I've got 3 rules, and we're going to pose them to each other and see if we think that they are viable, whether they're interesting, and they're as crazy and fundamentally flawed as possible, that will make F1 exciting and ridiculous. We want to make sure that F1 stays as fun and exciting as possible, but we want to add to it in several different ways. So 6 ways that we can make F1 better. So, I mean, do you want to start off, Sab? Have you got your first one to pose to me and see if we can get it added onto the list?
So my first one is basically, it's down to hopefully if the grid was a lot closer and people from anywhere on the grid could win, not just on the top 3. So it's more based on if it was a tighter field. And I'd like to suggest the opportunity to have like guest teams and drivers come into Formula One for odd races. Like, for example, the main reason why I say is for the Monaco Grand Prix, because as you know, the Monaco Grand Prix is part of the Triple Crown, isn't it? The Indy 500, Monaco Grand Prix, and Le Mans. Now, as far as I can see, it's a lot easier to get into Le Mans and Indy 500 for a guest drive, but if you're not a racer in Formula One, you can't. So if, for example, you are not in that circle of Formula One and you're trying to go for this Triple Crown, what is very elusive, as Fernando is certainly finding out, it's very difficult then if you go and win the Indy 500 and Le Mans, unless by some miracle you can get a Formula One seat, you are never going to get that Triple Crown. So for me, it would be really good if, as long as they pass certain like regulations to prove they are quick enough for the race and stuff like that, it'd be great if you could bring in some guest teams, guest drivers who could potentially have a go at trying to claim this elusive Triple Crown, or even any other races, just to spice things up, having a special somebody or whoever to come in and see how they do against all the rest of Formula One, because like I say, you do get these guest and special entries into other series. It'd be interesting to see if Formula One did the same. That'd be my first rule change.
I like it. So what would be the parameters here? Are we saying that you're only allowed to guest in one race in the season, or can you guest in several, or and equally how what we're saying grid size? Are we going like maybe up to 30 cars, so you can have like potentially 10 guests or per race?
Yeah, that sounds good. As long as it's obviously not too cramped. I could imagine 30 cars around Monaco would be absolutely insane. But I was thinking something along the lines of, you get the opportunity to race in 3 races if you wish over a season. If you wanted to go for the Triple Crown, go for the Triple Crown. You've also got other iconic races within Formula One now. You know, like for example, the Belgian Grand Prix. If you wanted to go for the British Grand Prix or something special like the Singapore Grand Prix, something like that, just to have the opportunity to be part of Formula One. And if, like I said, it all depends on if the grid was a lot closer and a lot of people could go for race wins and what have you. It'd be really interesting to see new names, new liveries, new cars, and just new ideas going into the race. You could find yourself cheering for this random person coming in and potentially upsetting Formula One drivers who are into their groove into the season. But like I say, I'd want to set like ground rules, like they'd have to take strict tests, for example, at certain circuits to make sure they are up to speed. So you're not getting in somebody super slow that could cause accidents, for example, because we don't want that. You want somebody who could come in, get right up to speed, prove they can race with these guys, and mix it up and try and upset the experience of Formula One and give you something different to cheer for trackside or on TV.
I like it. I think it'd be a neat idea. And although, what would we do? Would we have like a pre-qualifying event, perhaps? Because like you see in Le Mans and in IndyCar for the Indy 500,
yeah.
Obviously Alonso didn't manage to qualify for it. So do they have to earn their way in? Because you could, I guess, if you have this open to guests, you could have like 30 people apply to be in that 10 group. Do you have like a qualifying event to see who deserves to be there?
You most definitely could, yeah, and that would also make it more of an event for the weekend, because you could have that pre-qualifying race on the Thursday, for example, when it's usually just media day for the F1 teams. You could have that pre-qualifying event so you can get the fans in on the extra day. They get to see track action. They'll get to see cars really going for it to try and get in and be part of that race weekend. And it would give, like I say, give more to the fans, more for them to see more racing action, because that's what fans ultimately want, don't they? You'll see, like when we have rain days or other bits where teams don't go out, it would give them more track action, give them more value for their money, wherever that would be. So yeah, something like on a Thursday where you have a pre-qualifying race and the top 10 of that go through in to be able to race that weekend.
Well, sign me up. I'm writing that one on the list. That's straight down. I like that one. That's a strong way to start. So yeah, if you are watching, guys, of course, let us know. Do you agree? Do you think that there should be guest spots for guys to join the race and look at going for elusive wins? Maybe a British racer going for the Silverstone Grand Prix, and someone joining in to go for that Triple Crown. And yeah, it's let us know. Of course, you can go onto the comments live on YouTube and let us know there, or you can go back on Twitter by going to @InvictusRL and going to the official Invictus site and tell us there, or our own ones at GT2_driving, for myself at Alan Sabatino. Let us know, do you like the rule that you can have guest drivers? My first one, and I gave the game away a little bit as when we were discussing the agenda for tonight earlier. So I imagine you've got a few thoughts about it. Is so the start of the weekend. We have all the teams lined up on the start-finish line, and all the drivers waiting there around the race director for that week. And he has a coin in his hand, and all teams know the scenario that's going to happen, so they've pre-prepared. So don't worry about the fact that they're not prepared, or don't think that they're not prepared for it. So he has heads or tails as usual. On the heads, the race is run in its usual direction, but if it's tails, the circuit is run in reverse. So you can't properly prepare for it. So drivers are going into it fresh. It might be that you might have one driver that's particularly strong at a circuit, and now they're having to completely relearn braking points. They're having to relearn where to push, where they can't push. What do you think about running a track in reverse? I can tell you're raring to go. You allow yourself the opportunity to see some iconic corners, but the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely very interesting. I've got so many questions about it. Like, for example, you say you got to relearn braking points and stuff. I was just thinking then, as you were explaining it, could you imagine trying to take the pit entry the wrong way round? Like, for example, at Belgium, which is, do you imagine that thin road, what's usually the entrance, is coming on the exit now, and then suddenly like Abu Dhabi, where you go under the track, don't you? You'd literally be going under the track to come into the pits and out the other way. That would be very unique and interesting as well. But for me, you to talk about corners, you think of Eau Rouge, for example, going that the wrong way. I was also thinking, do you imagine the castle section at Azerbaijan going the wrong way? That would be absolutely insane, going down through the castle section. You wouldn't know where to go with it, would you? If you, for example, if you were as a fan and you missed the coin toss, for example, coin toss even, I can't even speak, coin toss even, and you flicked it on later and you suddenly seen these cars, like at Singapore or anywhere, going round the wrong way, you wonder what's going off. It would certainly add some interesting elements to it. I've just, like I said earlier, I've got the pit entrance and the exits. That fascinate me the most. But so what would you do? Because, like, for example, with the start procedures on grids and stuff, you would then, I assume, you would have to have 2 lots of grid slots, some on the other side, and lights and everything else.
Absolutely. So all tracks are well aware that this could potentially happen. So they've got lights at either end of the grid, and grid slots are interchangeable. So we don't have the conventional grid slot as it is at the moment, where you have the flat line in front of the nose wing with obviously the 2 little ends. You just have a flat line where they have to line up their front wing or their front tyres, depending on how you'd wanted to start it. And so lights at either end. So I think it'd be, because you could see, I mean, and if it adds to your one where you could potentially have 30 cars on the grid.
Wow.
You might have cars starting on bends, and it's I think it's, if you imagine some of the circuits that we could go to, and like, yes, it might take away from some iconic corners, and obviously 130R would no longer be flat because it'd be on the exit of a chicane. But you'd then be travelling all the way up towards Spoon, so you take Spoon as fast as you take 130R. So it's got its merits, and if you've tried it on any sort of Formula One game, it is an absolute blast. It's so like alien to you, that you're so used to driving a circuit in a particular direction, that if you try and do it the other way around, it's actually like, if you imagine Monaco, and obviously Monaco would be the big one, but you'd have to make your way back up the hill. So you go through the tunnel and then go through Mirabeau and through the Lowe's hairpin, and you go back up the hill through the Casino Square and back down the hill towards the start finish line. So I think it's and obviously this is on a coin toss, so you have no idea how to set yourself up. So I think, how else do you keep your drivers on their toes? You tell them that they won't be able to work, they won't be able to practice the circuit.
So with that in mind, then, with this rule you've added to the rule book, which race would you like to see the most ran in reverse?
I mean, you said Belgium, and Belgium would definitely be up there, because I think it would be funny just to see the cars running, obviously Radion and Eau Rouge in reverse. But I think there are so many that could potentially be run in reverse and be equally as fascinating. I think Monza would be quite fun in reverse, because you'd end the lap with the Resifilio chicane, and then the first corner would be the Parabolica. Yeah. So you'll go straight into the Parabolica, and then another straight all the way down to the Ascari chicane. So, like, the first half of the first lap of Monza is just potentially 30 cars at full throttle for the majority of about 30-40 seconds. So
yes, that would be very unique.
I think Monza would be fascinating. I think. Trying to think of some of the other ones. I think Brazil would be quite interesting in reverse, because obviously you'd be going up the center S's to end the lap. Wow. So that would be a fun one to do in reverse. But yeah, I think if you look at certain tracks, and there are some I think that you could do in reverse and almost not notice the difference. I think you could do Spain in reverse and not know any different. I think you could possibly even do Silverstone in reverse and not know that much difference.
Yeah, that'd be unique. I was just also thinking, do you imagine Russia, that final corner for the start-finish line? The start-finish line's literally on that final corner, isn't it? Do you imagine them all facing the wrong way, trying to go around that corner to start with, and then that really long run down to that final corner? Wow, 30 cars, for example, going through there. That'd be absolutely insane.
The breaking point for that
Yeah.
would be first corner.
So, yeah, shall we move on to my next one now? And I touched on it a little bit in the summer break, and I have to say the Bernie sprinkler system idea should come in, just because of how bonkers it can be. We've seen, for example, with Germany this year, how bonkers that race went when it was going dry, wet all the time, and people skating off everywhere. We bring up Belgium once again. Belgium's a great example for when it's raining on one end of the circuit and bone dry on the other circuit. I think if you brought in this Bernie sprinkler system idea, which everybody thought was bonkers at the time, but it seems to me make more sense now more than ever to try and spice up racing. I think if you had the opportunity, not all the time and not at every track, because it wouldn't make sense, I don't think, if you had it at Bahrain, for example. I think you'd have to have it at circuits like your Silverstone, your Belgiums, ones that are known to have rain, and if there wasn't forecast for rain, you could just say, right, it's like set on a random timer, or it might not even happen, and it's just a case of just getting on with it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and it just gives the drivers and the teams that extra element and extra thinking to do to get the strategies bang on, because like I say, it could be raining at Radion and bone dry at the bus stop chicane, and that acts as even more nervousness for the drivers and for the fans as well, knowing that they could chuck on a set of intermediates or wets, and then 5 minutes later the track's bone dry again, and suddenly they have to come back in again, and you could end up with numerous different stretches. So I'd like to add that into the book.
I like it. I always thought it was a funny idea when Birdie, because artificially watering the track, and it was actually one of the little nuggets of information is it was actually brought in at Paul Ricard in France. It was the first place that ever did it, so the technology is actually there for it to happen. What would set it off? Would it be something that was maybe like fan interaction, that you could have a vote online?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Shall we introduce it into Sector 2 now, or something like that? It's almost something like Death Race, that you have fan interaction.
Yeah, let's not involve any spikes or anything though. That would be a bit crazy. But yeah, you could quite easily. That would get the fans more involved, wouldn't it? To make it harder for the teams to work out what the fans are doing, you could say, for example, we're going to add rain in Sector 2 between the time of 10 minutes and 20 minutes into the race. So it's any time in between there, not a specific time. You just throw it in there, so the teams can't, like, for example, watch the live feed and say, oh, the fans have voted for Sector 1, there's going to be rain right now, let's chuck a set of wets on. So I think that'd be easy for the strategists, and you know how clever they are to work out what tyres to put on. So make it in the fans' hands, like you say, but make it random at the same time, so it still keeps the teams on their toes.
Is this happening every race? Is it happening?
No, I'd say I'd do it at races that you're more likely to get rain at, because I think it wouldn't seem real as much if you had, for example, rain in at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, for example. You don't see rain there. I'd do it at races that are predominantly known for having mixed conditions and possibility of rain, and if it also did actually rain as well, that would even make it even more interesting then. So yeah, I would only stick it to the tracks you know it's more likely going to rain than not, and then it's just spice it up a bit, because like I say, I know it wasn't done in Germany, but you've seen all the offs and different incidents we had in that race, and we had Danny Kvyat on the podium, it could bring more of these mixed up podiums and potential race wins in the race.
Yeah, it's a nice idea. I think. Do we have a possibly an intensity meter? Do you have like
Yeah.
a light sprinkling through to like
Yeah.
downpour? Do we?
I'll be honest, you've thought about this more than me, and I thought about it earlier. I'd never even thought of that. That's definitely an idea. Yeah, you could even get the fans involved on the intensity of this shower or sprinkling or whatever it is. It could be just a light sprinkling that makes drivers think it's absolutely wet through, and in fact, after a few laps, the dry tyres just are clean going through it, and it's nothing bad. That's definitely a possibility. And if, for example, you could be going round turn 3 or 4 at Paul Ricard and it's absolutely soaping wet through with needing wets, and then you go up to turn 8 or 9 and it's bone dry again. So that would definitely spice up, and I wouldn't know what tyres to put on. It would certainly make it interesting.
I like the fact that at the moment, if we stick to our rules, we've got drivers that have never raced in Formula One that are having a guest racing on a reverse circuit that's been artificially watered. We're really introducing them into the world of Formula One in a fantastic way, aren't we?
Throwing them right in the deep end.
Absolutely. Sure, why not? Let's bring in some artificial sprinklers. It will make Bernie happy. He can finally retire back to wherever he has his millions and know that one of his crazy ideas finally made it into Formula One. My second one. Now I've got two here, and I'm not quite sure which one to go with. I've got a relatively normal one that I think we could bring in, and I've got an absolutely crazy one that I think would also be such a laugh. So what would you prefer? Would you prefer a relatively more serious one, or would you prefer my not serious in the slightest one?
Well, just the way this has gone so far, I'd go with the not serious one, because these guest drivers have had it bad enough as it is so far. Let's just make it even harder for them. So let's go with the sillier version, shall we say?
Absolutely. Okay, right. So guest drivers who are driving reverse track in the rain. You're now starting the race in a nice 1940s 1950s Le Mans style. So all the drivers lined up on the edge of the track. The flag is dropped. You're allowed one mechanic who has the job of strapping you in and starting the engine. So it's all been pre-organized. It just needs it being flicked over. Obviously, they're all controlled by computers now. So I'm sure all these people standing around the car are barely needed. I could turn one of those things on just by flicking a few switches. So yeah, you're allowed one mechanic, and they're allowed to choose that one. And all the drivers have to run to their car. And so you start in championship order. So the first race of the season, all the drivers draw lots, and then obviously you might have an Alfa Romeo leading from a Toro Rosso from Mercedes. But as the championship goes on, the championship leader would have the first or the nearest to the line. But yeah, an old style Le Mans dash to the cars before the race starts.
Where would you have them dashing from? The other side of the track, from the garage? Where would they be coming from? Would they be, like I say, coming from their own team garage, and they've got to make way through the pit lane, or how would you have the start with the drivers?
They've all got to be in equal distance, haven't they? So to make it relatively fair. So I'd say maybe halfway up the start finish straight. So they've got to run. And the car's obviously a little bit further down, so the guy in first has maybe sometimes got a little bit further to run, but that's only a little bit of impetus to run a little bit harder, isn't it? You want to make sure these guys are out of breath when they're getting strapped into the car.
Well, I've just got a vision of this now going in reverse. It's Monaco, for example. Some people's cars would potentially God, that'd be an absolute nightmare. I've just got a vision of like an Austin Powers moment trying to shimmy it in between the barriers to get going. That'd be absolutely insane.
Yeah. Oh, why not? Why not? Let's have like you've got that one mechanic. He's got to try and somehow get you strapped in, get your get your steering wheel attached, then start the engine. Then he's got to get out of the way because he's potentially got another 29 cars thundering towards him.
Was
And
it what in terms of sorry to interrupt, in terms of safety though? How are we going to be sure that the drivers are strapped in safely? Because we wouldn't, for example, want somebody doing it incorrectly, and then halfway round the track, half of them are hanging out of the car. So how would you ensure that because we've got to obviously be safe these days as well in Formula One. So how would you ensure that the safety still is there and the mechanics are properly harnessing them into the car?
Oh, and absolutely, and safety is my number one concern with this Le Mans style start, and so I propose some sort of lock mechanism. So when you've done up the like the seatbelt, there would be a green light that would appear either on the dashboard or on top of the car, and you often see that green light that tells you that the battery is active, and obviously it's
Yeah.
green or red. So I'd propose maybe like a secondary light on top of that, and that tells you when the driver is fully locked in and strapped into the car, and they're there good to go. And only then is the engine sort of like primed, if that makes sense. So you
Yeah.
can't. It's almost
Yeah.
like a kill switch. So you can't start the engine until the driver is properly strapped into the car.
You've got this properly figured out. Well, that sounds very interesting to me. Again, like I said, I'm just thinking of so many different tracks that this would be incredible to watch at. It's like at Kota, for example, them going in reverse around there with 30 cars and in the wet and everything else, trying to strap each other in. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's a good one. That is a really good one. This is going to be probably the trickiest season of Formula One known to man so far. But
Well,
go on, sorry.
it's. I mean, this is what the fans want. They're clamoring for change. People have been saying how boring F1 has been since the V6 hybrids came in, and we are just tearing the rule book apart, and we're making
Yes.
F1 the must watch racing series on the planet.
So with my final one, it's not entirely about F1. It's more about what goes on the weekend, if I may. So I'm proposing. Americans do this a lot. They do a massive Hall of Fame thing where they introduce all their best and greatest athletes or whatever series it is. And what I was thinking was we could have what's classed as a Hall of Fame series, similar to F2, but we have all the classic racers from the 80s and 90s, and only in the European season we have them have like a support race with the Formula One over the weekend, and we get to see the likes of Mika Hakkinen, Alain Prost, David Coulthard, Jack Villeneuve, and they are in their own separate series. They race only through the European series season, so they don't have to go miles around the world to be part of it. They can just solely stick to this. It makes it cheaper and easier for mechanics, cheaper and easier for everybody else. Fans get to see their favourite heroes from the past if they've never ever had the opportunity to see them in person or on a racetrack. They get the opportunity to see them race again. Yeah, it might not be for their favourite team, but you get like Formula 2 style cars where they're all pretty much equal, and at the end of this mini championship, they're awarded similar like you see in NFL and stuff, where they get like this big ring and a big trophy, and they get their name up in this like Hall of Famers being the Hall of Fame champion, and you could be crowned. It's like a senior race, but you don't want to call it that, so you make it sound more prestigious and call it a Hall of Fame championship, where you have, like say, Mika Hakkinen or whoever to race and give people who have adored these people in the past the opportunity to see them one more time.
I think that's a really nice idea, actually. And I know they did something like that, and I cannot remember what it was called a while back, and it was sort of older F1 drivers that were part of it, or older drivers, and there was touring cars and supercars. So yeah, I really like that idea. I think it's a very interesting. I'm sure the drivers would like it. I do. What would you do with So what's the entry requirements? Do you have to have been a race winner? Do you have to have won a world championship, or can we see like Pastor Maldonado making his comeback
No,
to a
no,
racer
just
series?
no. No. I think it's got to be. I'd say it's tough, isn't it? You definitely got to include your world champions. Um, I think you probably also include race winners, and I know Pastor Maldonado is a race winner, but just I was thinking more along the lines of like your 80s and 90s race drivers who, like for me, for example, I never got a chance to see Mika Häkkinen race, for example. I'd love to have seen him out on track in a McLaren racing. That'd be a dream for me, and I think uh, you're looking at like more like the drivers you would associate from that era who are well known, people who either adored or didn't much like, but they were well known in that era. You could add Damon Hill in there, Johnny Herbert, people like that, people who are still well loved within the community. Gerhard Berger, another one. There's so many names you could add there, and I think you could do so it's not going to take too much out of them. Don't do it like F2 where you have two races over a weekend. You could just do one race, say on a Friday, for example, or whenever, or a Thursday even, and you just say 20 laps around. You get the opportunity at the end to invite the fans into the fan zone because they can have the podium on the fan zone, so you get to be even closer to these legends of Formula One. They do all the old style podium with the wreaths and stuff around them. They do the champagne celebration and stuff, and it just gives fans an opportunity. I'm thinking more in terms of the fans with this one. The fans an opportunity to maybe get closer to heroes they may not have had the opportunity to get closer to.
I like it. I think it's a really nice idea. I think the fans would love it as well. Would you have an age limit? Could you potentially have Sterling Moss trying to get back into one of these cars? Possibly.
No.
He's one of the heroes. Have you got Jackie Stewart going up against up against the likes of Jacques Villeneuve?
Well, obviously, I'd say you'd have to pass a fitness test. I'd say, and I no disrespect to Sterling Moss, such a legend, but I just don't think it'd be quite safe for somebody like him to be competing in this. But I think as long as they pass a fitness test and probably an eyesight test if you want to go that old, and they prove they can race, which obviously they can, but they can prove they can be competitive and not cause any accidents. And I think it's pretty open really, as long as you pass that fitness test. Because obviously once you do get older, things don't quite work as well as they once were. Did they? So, yeah, I just think as long as they're fit and able and they've got the hunger and desire to race, then all go for it. But my other side rule to that is no Pastor Maldonado.
Well, I'll make sure that I let Pastor know personally that he's not going to be invited to the support race. But yeah, I think that's a fascinating idea. I think the fans would love it. I think the current drivers would probably love it as well because they'd equally get to see the drivers they grew up idolising on track. So what would you say? How soon after you retire are you allowed to join? Could Lewis or Seb they retire from Formula One? How soon do they have to wait before they're allowed into this series?
I'd say 5 years.
Yeah.
Give it 5 years. Say 5 years, and then you are classed as in this category, this Hall of Fame Championship category, and you could do it at the end of the final race of the season in Europe. You could do the whole ceremony at the end in the fan zone. So unlike the FIA gala they have in Paris at the end of the year, where fans don't really ever get a chance to see the drivers and stuff get these rewards, you could have all the reward ceremony in the fan zone at the end, so they get the opportunity to see whoever win the championship, lift the championship trophy, get their Hall of Fame ring or whatever, and it gives the fans an opportunity to see all this being won in front of them. None of this fancy gala nonsense what you tend to see for VIPs. Let's have the fans involved with it all. And you could, like you mentioned earlier with the spring system, getting the fans involved with that. You could get the fans involved equally with like driver of the days and stuff like that with this series as well, just to give them an opportunity to get as close as they possibly can to their heroes.
I really like it. Yep, that's definitely, and I might actually get on the phone to Chase Carey and try and chase him up on that one, because that's my favourite one so far. My final one, and mine was very similar to that, so I might go to my banker one, my other one that I had, because my similar one to yours was much like what NASCAR have, and they have a retro weekend each season.
Right.
So all the cars in NASCAR and all the drivers, all the mechanics, they dress up in their teams or a historic or retro get up. So you might see the McLarens might be racing in the white and red Marlboro colours. You might get some of the maybe some of the cars that used to be different cars. So you look at Force India, they might go back to Jordan yellow, or Racing Point, they might go back to Jordan yellow. That would be the retro weekend. But I'll go to my banker one, which is one I was talking about earlier, and this is a semi-serious one, and this would be making the season a lot more on driver pace. So much like sort of how we see IndyCar, all cars are built to strict spec. So you get given dimensions about whatever everything can be. Same aero, same brakes, same suspension units, same power units. But you're allowed to tweak your setup. So your setup is key. Obviously, you can work out how you use your car differently. But during the race, you're given DRS 3 times that you have to strategically use over the race. And like IndyCar, you've got 200 seconds of increased energy mode, so party mode like we have in qualifying. But you can use it almost like KERS that we saw in like the early 10s, late sort of 2000s, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So you have 200 seconds of KERS that you're allowed to use over a race distance, and somewhat like we see with fan boost in Formula E now. So yeah, drivers is basically all pace, and the strategy comes in when do they use this DRS, when do they use this energy boost, because do you use it to attack, do you use it to defend, do you use it on an in-lap, and then obviously your DRS, do you use it to do you use it, you can use it, you don't have to be within a second of the car ahead, you can use it at any point. If you want to try and catch up to someone, you can use it. If you're on an in-lap and you're trying to do an undercut or an overcut, you can use it. So it's all about strategy from the driver, as opposed to possibly the engine power or anything like that.
I like it. I do like it because, like you say, it puts it more in the hands of the drivers and who's clever enough and who's quick enough to get the job done. So my question is, based on drivers, with you thinking of all this, who would you think this would benefit the most on the current F1 grid?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because you have to think about who's the best pure driver. And I'd say at the moment you'd probably have Max and Charles. I think they're the best pure drivers on. I think Lewis is. I think Lewis would be up there as usual. But then I think there'd be surprises throughout the grid. I think you'd see George Russell being very competitive with this. I think he's he has got a lot of just raw pace. I think Carlos Sainz has got raw pace. I think it's a really interesting idea that if you gave everyone the same car and race them, who would be the fastest?
Yeah, definitely, and like you say, with using it whenever you want. I was also thinking if you had a safety car or anything, for example, and you was waiting for it to go green again, you could potentially just go all out for it then and try and make the jump then, and then potentially defend it from there on. So that is a good idea actually, and it gives you different different ideas for the drivers, what potentially they could do, like you say, whether to defend hard for the last few laps or save it all and go for it themselves on the attack. But what would you say to people who may say Formula One's all about the technicians trying to push the cars to the limit in terms of all the building of the cars and stuff like that, and if you go into standardisation, what would you say to people who say Formula One's about being the very best in the world, and it wouldn't be right going back down to this way? Even though I think it's a good idea, I could imagine people would say that.
Oh yeah, and you'll always get your detractors, and I would understand the sort of the reluctance to it, and I can understand people being upset that you'd lose that sort of the beauty of someone creating the perfect machine. But if you want to have the pinnacle of motorsport, as Formula One says it is and comes across as, I believe you have to have a system where you allow that driver to earn their way to being the best driver, and what better way to do it than have a system where everyone has the same machine. And yes, it is amazing to see cars that Adrian Newey's produced, but it does mean that we get teams that don't have the funds, possibly holding drivers or using drivers that could be a lot faster. And then potentially even falling out of Formula One because they didn't get the chance to impress, and it means we don't have this sort of domination by the big teams. We don't have Mercedes, Ferrari, and the like running away with it. I think it would be. It would be a loss because you'd lose sort of like the beauty of sort of like these technicians and these strategists equally, but I think it puts everything back on the driver, and I think that's what makes it what would make it interesting is that it's all on the driver. When do they make that decision? Do they have almost like a crew chief or someone like that that's telling them in their ear? Like in Indy, they'll have they'll have their crew chief or engineer in their ears saying the driver behind is using their DRS or is using their party mode, and then it's up to you. Do you use yours to defend, or are you comfortable with your raw pace to be able to keep it ahead?
Yeah, and not only that, with the standardization of parts and stuff, you would, like you said, save money, so that would help teams with less money than the big teams out, and it was, like I say, it would bring everybody closer, wouldn't it? It's a very good idea, and I think it would give us the opportunity to see different races, and I think it'd also eliminate the idea of paid drivers, because you probably would get drivers coming in to try and prove their worth, but they would be soon found out, wouldn't they, if they're in a series which is so equal, and you could find yourself quickly looking at the exit of Formula One as soon as you've walked through the entrance. So I think it'd be great, because not only would it give us all variety of different winners, but it would also save money for all teams in the long run, and it would really show us who is the very best out there.
Yeah. And so I mean, there are 6 new rules for 2021 that I'm sure will be coming in. I don't understand why they'd ever decide to go against Sab and I's almighty and powerful words. So if you are a Formula One driver, you are thinking about joining the grid for 2021, please remember that there will be a coin toss for whether the race will be done in the normal direction or in reverse. You'll be in a spec car. You'll be watching a retro race or a heritage race beforehand with the legends of Formula One going up against each other. You'll potentially have 30 cars with guest racers going up against you, and it might potentially be under artificial sprinklers. And so yeah, if you're not already foaming at the mouth with excitement for what is going to be a fantastic 2021 season, I don't understand what else you need. So yeah, what a way to end that. But if you, like I said, guys, if you do agree with us, let us know. We'd love to know your thoughts. We'd love to know your crazy ways that you'd like to make F1 better. So let us know on Twitter. or in the comments on this video on YouTube. So yeah, go to the Twitter at Invictus RL, or our own personal ones at Alan Sabatino for Sab, at GT2_driving for myself. Let us know your crazy rule changes you'd like to see for 2021 to make the race a little bit more exciting. But bringing us back down to earth a little bit more, and we'll just quickly preview this upcoming Japanese Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Super Typhoon Hagibis is threatening to tear apart the sort of the east coast, sorry, of Japan over the next few days, and it's making its way towards Suzuka and Tokyo at the moment. And World Cup matches in the rugby have been called off already, and it looks like qualifying might be under threat. We saw qualifying postponed in 2010 and 2004, I believe it was. Sab, with qualifying potentially being on Sunday morning, does that affect anyone? Do you think it, or does it change how these drivers prepare for the race?
I don't think it would change it too much. I can imagine it would be a bit of a pain for them, but I can't imagine it would be too much a bother. But if qualifying was on a Sunday and one of them had a big accident, it could have the implications of not even getting in the race then, because if the car is too badly damaged in qualifying, then they suddenly could be finding themselves not even racing, which could be a big issue. I've got a couple of friends out there at the moment, and they've been getting the warnings and stuff like that. At the moment, like you say, it looks like it's going to potentially hit on the Saturday, and from what they've been telling me, the Japanese, the locals have told them, is the problem with these typhoons is they can sometimes have a mind of their own and go one way then go the other, and it could be a case of it could just completely go a different direction come Saturday, and it could completely miss them. So from what they've told me as well, they said everybody is just waiting and watching the weather radars, and the FIA are just going to obviously take action when needed. But it's a delicate one, isn't it? Because it's risky, because if you say let's go for it, and then there's potential injuries or anything worse out there, then they're going to look and point at the FIA for this. So it's a delicate situation. I think they've just got to take the time with to make sure that this typhoon, what is potentially going to hit, keeps everybody safe, and they can still go ahead. But hopefully they can still go ahead for Sunday, and it's just the case of we miss qualifying on the Saturday.
Yeah, 100% agree there. And safety has to be the number one priority for these drivers. And equally, they did say that although Sunday's looking like it will be sunny, but it will be quite windy still. And with Suzuka having quite a lot of high-speed corners and a little bit of wind could potentially mean we see a lot of or a few more mistakes than we would do usually. So yeah, hopefully we will get to go racing at least on Sunday, even if we have to move qualifying to the Sunday morning. Is this Red Bull's best chance of the win for the rest of the season? They put fresh power units in the car from the Russian Grand Prix. Is this the home race? Obviously Honda powered. Is this their best chance to get a win before the end of the season? Now that Mercedes and Ferrari are starting to raise their game a little bit more.
It's gonna. They've obviously put all their eggs in this basket, haven't they? It's going to be tough, I think, with Ferrari now. Even though Russia didn't go so well for them, Ferrari seem to have found a new leash of life now, haven't they? Mercedes picking up that 1-2, they're going to be on hot form like they were for most of the season coming into this race. I still think if it's going to be anybody, it's going to be Max who's going to try and go for the win. Alex, he's done all right, hasn't he? But I can't see him going for a race win or even a podium at the weekend. So I think it's pretty much all down to Max, isn't it? And I think it just might be out of Red Bull's reach. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. And this time next week I'll be saying how amazing Max was at the Japanese Grand Prix. But I think if Ferrari don't fight themselves, and Mercedes, whichever track Mercedes go to these days, they're always the fastest or one of the fastest. So I think with 4 cars there for one Max Verstappen, it's going to be very tough for him to beat. But you can never really count Max out, can you? These days, he's always got something in his pocket.
No, and he's going to be looking at stopping this. He wants to be that young up and comer, and at the moment Charles Leclerc is taking that mantle off him a little bit here, because Charles obviously going on for hoping to continue his pole position streaks. But you were talking about Albon and how he potentially might not have as good a race as his teammate Max Verstappen. Who needs a better race out of the? I hate to use the phrase number 2 drivers, but Bottas, Albon, and Vettel potentially at the moment. Who needs a better race out of those 3?
Tough, isn't it? See, you say Vettel. I think, ignoring what happened in Russia, he was absolutely flying, wasn't he? He got the win in Singapore and seemed to get the old Seb back. I think I'd probably go with Bottas, just because he's been knocked down a peg or two, hasn't he, recently? He got told in Singapore he's got to slow down to let Lewis back in, which would have harmed his ego tremendously. And I just think Bottas, he just needs a pick-me-up, doesn't he? It's second half of the season, it's been pretty much Bottas of last year. Seb's looked a lot quicker since that Ferrari has found that new aero, and Alex Albon, I don't think he needs this race to go well for him. I think so far he's done all right in that Red Bull, hasn't he? He's scored points. I think he's scored points in every race he's been with them since he joined them. So I think he's just doing everything. He's ticking every box at the moment he needs to in that Red Bull. So I'd potentially say it's Bottas that could do with the pick-me-up, because otherwise he's just going to finish the season pretty much like he did last season, way behind his teammate and struggling to fight the Ferraris.
Yeah, you'd think that with him being that little bit closer this season, but I mean the midpoint, he started off, we were saying he's a completely different driver, but then Lewis kind of went into a different gear and he just wasn't able to keep up. So you can see he's almost slipping back into that Bottas of old that we saw last season, that was potentially going to lose his drive. But now that he's locked in for next season, he does need to sort of end this season on a high. I think Alex does need to keep pushing. I think top 5 results, top 6 results is what he should be aiming for each week, because obviously he doesn't want to be in a position where he was fighting like Pierre was early in the season, where he was dropping down to maybe like 7th or 8th and struggling to overtake guys ahead of him. So I think he needs to have another positive race. So we'll see what he can do. And Seb, like you said, he did somewhat improve after that Singapore race, and his mood improved after the win. But the frustration last week out in Russia after the issues in the team, the car breakdown. We'll see if his head has dropped once again. So it's a big race for a lot of drivers this weekend, and it's an early one. It's 10:06 in the morning if you want to watch it live. So make sure you set your alarm clocks if you are going to get up for the Japanese Grand Prix on Sunday morning. And Sab, just one final word on the Japanese Grand Prix. Let's have a top 3 from you. End of the race. Who's going to be on the podium?
You do realise this is going to be completely wrong.
Oh, but absolutely. We're never right, ever.
I'll go with Lewis, Seb, Charles, top 3.
Okay. Well, it will be completely different. Don't worry, guys. That's not. I wouldn't go to the bookies with that bet, because as proved on Mondays and on Thursdays, Sab and I know absolutely nothing about Formula 1. Yeah. So yeah. But I hope you all enjoy it. And just for the last portion of the podcast, of course, we are Invictus Racing League. We are a PS4-based esports league racing on F1 2019 and GT Sport. It was the penultimate race of our first season on F1 2019, and championships were sewn up this week. 3 championships were sewn up this week, and we'll start off on Monday. And it's a race that you missed, unfortunately, in the commentary box. I was in fact joined by who is now F2 championship, F2 champion Warrislander of Vouts, and he was a really really good addition to the commentary box. And congratulations to him. Really enjoyed having him there. But it was Scopefield that took the win ahead of Charlie and White Fountain in second and third. And heavy rain came in the qualifying session about 2 minutes in. Drivers caught in the pit lane, didn't quite know when the rain was coming, and it meant that the guys that got out there first started way ahead, so the grid was nicely jumbled up. And come the race, it was heavy rain the entire race through. We saw instance, we saw changes in position, but what we didn't see was a change for the lead. Scopefielder led flag to flag. Fantastic race from the Swede, back to winning ways for Scopefielder.
Yeah, he's had a fantastic season, hasn't he? I just want to quickly say I got the opportunity to watch most of the race Monday night, and I'd like to say Warrislander was absolutely superb alongside you on his debut. He sounded like he'd been doing it for weeks, so hopefully in the future we'll hear more commentary from him. It'd be great to hear his thoughts on different races in Invictus. But yeah, Scopefielder he's been superb, and he's finishing the season like he knows, like how he knows best, doesn't he? By winning races, and he once again did it very very well. And he'll be gutted, won't he? Because I think if he hadn't miss a few races in this league, he could have potentially won this league. But he's done well.
Yeah, it was a good one. Charlie in second, and as I said, White Fountain in third. Charlie, he needs 1 point next week to win the title, and it looks like it's out of Scott's hands, and Scott looking like he's going to lose his championship that he's tried to hold on for this season. So for Scott to win the title, he needs a whole lot right or a load of stuff to go right for him. He needs to win next week and get the fastest lap, and hope that Charlie finishes outside of the top 10 or retires. So the Mercedes Constructors Championship has been sealed, so Charlie and Scott themselves have taken away that one already. But yeah, next week Charlie, he needs that 1 point to take the title. Scott has got a lot of work to do if he is to take it. And yeah, Charlie yet to win a race so far this season. And we've seen championships taken in the past. Skyzy famously didn't win a race for a season and a half, but took 2 championships in that time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next week, because Scott has got to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah, he has. It's just not gone right for Scott, has it, this season? It's just a few bad qualifying rounds, and just some off races for him. It's not the consistent Scott we've seen last season. He'll obviously be pleased that the constructors are wrapped up, but I'm sure next season, if by some miracle he does win the championship, he'll be wanting to come back raring to go and rectify how this season's gone.
Yeah. It's going to be a fascinating one, so make sure you join Sab and I next Monday for the final race of the season in Germany, the Hockenheimring, for the final race of the Gnosis Championship, and we'll find out if Charlie can get over the line or if it will all fall down in ashes around him, and he might even do a Seb and put it in the wall, and we'll just hear him crying into the microphone as his championship falls away from him. So yeah, anything can happen next week, of course, here in the Gnosis Championship. On to Tuesday nights, and it's the Realistic Performance League, and Sab, Jos took the win ahead of Zyman and TL44S, and how was the race? How did it go for you, and how did it go for everyone else?
It's very tough for myself. Jos was absolutely lightning on Tuesday night. I don't think anybody was getting near him. He drove superbly. Zyman, I think, was in the McLaren. He also had a very good race, racing home in second. He's had a few tough races, Zyman, of recently, but he's come home well in second. TL44S. Tom, he's my teammate. He's had a very good season, Tom, this season. picks up yet another podium. He's run close this season to win, to have a go at the championship, but unfortunately for him, Skyzy has once again claimed the championship. He came home in 6th place. That's his 3rd consecutive Performance League title. He is the man to beat on a Tuesday night in the Performance League. He knows how to get the results done, and finishing in 6th was just plenty enough for him to claim that championship and become champion once again. So huge congratulations to him.
Yeah, it was a fantastic result for Skyzy. And 3rd championship in a row. The Frenchman seemingly unstoppable on Tuesday night. So, yeah, congratulations to you, Skyzy, and equally to himself and Schofield who took the championship, Constructors' Championship between themselves. And commiserations to Todd Arbanuk, who retired from the race, so gifted Skyzy the win, or gifted the title over to him. Wednesday night, and it's the equal performance leagues. We have 3 leagues on a Wednesday: F1, F2, and F3. F1 was won by Foxy Red 2000, back on a top step for a long time, Foxy, so fantastic result for him. Westy is back in F1 with a bang. He's was in 2nd position, and Harry, of course, no assist driver, put himself on the podium. So Harry, after not picking up a podium on the Monday, managed to make up for it somewhat on Wednesday with a 3rd position. Scope already had won the title in F1. He sealed that last week. He's been absolutely lightning in a bottle this season. But Charlie locked in 2nd in the table. So I believe Renault win the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, a fantastic season for Scope. We said last week as well when he won the title, and yeah, he'll be missed. He'll be taking a break at the end of this season. So won't he? It's been great fun watching Scope over the last few seasons.
It really has. I've said last week how great a competitor he is. He's been absolutely superb once again. This season, I had a brief race with him on Tuesday night in the Performance League, and it was very brief. He soon breezed past me and made light work of overtaking me, and he's just for me, he's just one of the very best in Invictus. He's a real nice person to chat with as well. So yeah, he'll be definitely missed, and hopefully one day we'll get to see him back racing with us again.
Absolutely, yeah. So really looking forward to seeing what the Swede does when he comes back onto F2. And as I said before, it was the Warislander that took the win and therefore the championship. How to seal a championship in style? You take the win, and he did that by finishing well up the road from Steen and Eastimats in 3rd position. So it was 2 Dutchmen, 1st and 2nd, and an Estonian in 3rd. So it was a really, really good race from these guys. And safety car in the middle of the race due to a crash between Humbo Stone and MJ Coupe. And but Warislander, he was lightning fast all evening, and he was always towards the front. Unfortunately, Meg Lugby just couldn't keep up, and he got within DRS, and there was a little bit of team games between the 2 McLarens to allow Meg Lugby to get up to the back end and of Warislander, but a spin at turn 2 unfortunately undid Meg's evening, and he ended up dropping down and finishing outside of the podium points. So that meant that Waris was able to take the title. And here's a stat for you that's quite remarkable, is that Warislander has won the title, yet he hadn't scored a point until the 5th race of the season.
Wow.
Wow. He's won 6 of the next 7 races. He's tied the all-time record for most wins in a season at Invictus, and he can beat it next week if he wins in Germany. So yeah, Warislander, he has been an absolute beast at the end of this season. Constructors yet to be sealed. It's McLaren versus Alpha next week, with myself and Meg Lugby in the McLaren, 10 points ahead of Warislander and Simon, Mr. P, in the 2nd position in the Constructors. So we've got a 10-point advantage. So it'll be down to the a race around the Hockenheim ring for the Constructors. And finally, F3. And Sab, I'm sure you can let us know who is your F3 champion this season.
Ferocious Dan, huge congratulations to him. He's tried to win this championship, and finally he succeeded. He qualified on pole superbly and just ran away with it, really. There was nobody else really going to ever take this championship off him. He made sure he was going to take this, and he sure did. He thoroughly deserves it. I've had the opportunity to practice with him several times this season before race nights, and he's always looked on it. He's done well as well, because he's had several DNFs and a DNS as well, so he could have really run away with this league. The league looks closer than I think it should be, but Mike, who came to the league a little later, he come in, finished second, and he's now second in the championship with Sir Spud. He's started off the season a bit tricky, but he's started to find a bit of form of recent weeks. He came home in third. The Constructors' Championship, as you've just mentioned, in the F3 has been wrapped up with the McLaren team of Ferocious Dan and F1 Richards. They once again winning the Constructors. But yeah, Dan, he'll be moving up into F2 next season, and I'm sure with the pace he's got, he should go well next season in that league.
Yeah, it's he's the driver that I've raced against for several seasons, and he's definitely deserved it. Like you said, he's been there or thereabouts for such a long time. Finally, he wins that F3 title, and the McLarens and him and Richard, and we'll see if they split up. But that's a second Constructors' Championship in 3 seasons for those, and they only missed out in last season by a few points, I believe it was. So it was almost a trifecta of championships for those guys. And if they are split up, it'll be a shame, because they've been a fantastic team to watch. But yeah, congratulations to all of our champions that are now sealed as we go into the final races of the season. So of course, I say all of them apart from Charlie. Charlie, of course, needs that singular point if he is to take the title. Skysy's the champion in Performance League. And then F1, of course, is Schofield. F2 is the Warris Lander. And F3 is Ferocious Dan. And we've got, as I said, the Hockenheim Ring, the German Grand Prix. That will take us up to the end of this season. So if you are, of course, wanting to get involved, get yourself on the grid for next season, go to the website, invictusracingleague.com, to the Apply to Race section, and get yourself on the grid. We've got plenty of changes coming up in Invictus over the next few months, and then over the next few weeks, indeed. So a lot happening, a lot of very exciting little things changing about the league. So make sure you get involved and get yourself on the grid for next season. And just like to say congratulations to all the champions. It's as someone that's also put in the graft to win a championship, it's always a good feeling. And I know that Warris Lander was celebrating. He was very ecstatic on Wednesday when he won that one. So yeah, so congratulations to everyone for the wins and for your championships. It's a hard one to put in, and it always feels good. So hope you all enjoy it and look forward to next season. But one thing that Sab will be looking forward to is the hot lap question. And
always
we'll finish up with, of course, the hot lap question. Sab has given a question. He's got a minute to answer it, and if depending on what the question is, he's got a minute to answer it and give me his reason, or he's got a minute to answer it if I'm going to pose him a question. And this week I'm posing him a question. I've got 2 in front of me. I'm trying to choose between 2. I might even try and drop them both in if you get one very quickly.
Oh God!
And they're both obviously about the Japanese Grand Prix, which is coming up this weekend. And I would like you to tell me, when was the last time the Japanese Grand Prix was won by a car that wasn't powered by a Ferrari, a Mercedes, or a Renault?
I do not know. I honestly do not know that. Yeah, I am absolutely terrible at remembering stuff like that. You would be better at answering that. Unfortunately, I do not know. I am sorry.
Well, if I told you that it was your beloved McLaren,
right?
Would you be able to work out when or what power it was?
Surely it can't be that far back into the Honda days, surely.
Not quite.
I honestly don't know.
It was 1993.
Right.
Ayrton Senna in a McLaren Ford.
Wow. Yeah,
So
I wouldn't have got that.
dominance between the top three power units ever since then.
I'll hand in my McLaren.
Well, I'm
McLaren Plus
disappointed.
membership now and walk out, shall I?
And we'll finish up with the second one then. And McLaren have won the most amount of Grand Prix at the Japanese Grand Prix with 9. Can you name any of those 9 winners at the Japanese Grand Prix?
Jenson Button.
Yep, as well.
Lewis Hamilton.
That's 2.
Nick Hakkinen.
Yep, that's 3. 3. 98 and 99.
Oh God, you really are testing me, aren't you? Well done. I don't know. My mind's gone completely blank now. I apologise. I honestly don't know.
You've missed.
Go on.
A very famous one. And one that
Kimi Räikkönen.
There we go. Kimi Räikkönen from 17th to the win in 2005.
Yes. That as soon as you said very famous, that's what triggered it.
The first race at the Japanese Grand Prix when we returned to it, which a very famous win. It's gone down in history. It's there was a movie made around it.
Oh, Senna.
Senna was one, but
Prost.
No, not Prost.
I don't know.
James Hunt. James Hunt.
Oh God, yeah, I'm sounding worse by the minute here. Can we just end this now?
He calls himself a McLaren fan. James Hunt in 77, Senna in
inverted commas there.
Senna in 88 and 93, Berger in 91, Hakkinen in 98 and 99, Raikkonen in 2005, Hamilton 2007 in Fuji, and Button in 2011. So that's we'll keep our lips pierced about that one, about the fact that you couldn't manage to finish this easy McLaren trivia. Just the most basic knowledge, obviously.
Yeah. Yes. I think in the history of podcasts, there might be the first ever falling out in a minute. But no, yes, you definitely put me on the spot there. I appreciate it, but you certainly did put me on the spot there tonight. Well done.
Well, as they are getting harder, and I will continue to keep making them harder. So don't worry about that, guys. But that's us done for this week. We'll be back next week for episode 7 of the Invictus F1 podcast, where I'm sure we'll be talking about the fallout from the Japanese Grand Prix and probably talking about all the flack that we got given for making up the greatest F1 series of all time with all of our crazy rule changes. So if you want to listen to this back, of course, it is uploaded to YouTube, and as we stream here from 8 p.m. every Thursday. But if you want to listen on all your podcasting apps, it is uploaded to SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes, and hopefully Podbean very shortly. And of course, if you'd like to follow us on the socials, you can go to @InvictusRL on Twitter and Instagram, Invictus Racing League on YouTube and on Facebook. And of course, if you'd like our personal ones, it's @Alan Sabatino for Sam on Twitter, @GT2_driving for myself. And have a great weekend, guys. Enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix. Hopefully we'll see you on Monday night for the final race of the season for the No Assist Championship. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and ding the bell to be notified when we go live. And we will see you on Monday night for the final race of our No Assist Championship season. And if not, we'll see you back here on Thursday for next week's podcast. Have a great week, guys, and we'll see you later.